Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of textual study of the Quran. We had been reading the literal and idiomatic translation of verses which began from verse 243, and this was the section in which Prophet Samuel was discussed, and how how Talut, the king who's called Saul in the Bible, how he had that expedition against the enemies, which were the Philistines, and how he had put to test his army. And this is something which was very much similar to what the Prophet had done in the times of the Battle of Badr. So it's like a very similar battle that was being fought. And so therefore this was an example that was given to the believers that something very similar happened earlier on. And look how people who were very few in numbers, they overcame people who were very large in numbers. Kam min fi'atin qalilatin ghalabat fi'atin kathira. When believers, they have this rock solid confidence in God, they have this rock solid faith in God, then the lack of numbers is actually, that vacuum is filled by God's help. And so this whole episode was narrated before the believers of those times in order to inspire them. So we have discussed this already in detail as far as these exegetical points are concerned. So we had begun the idiomatic translation, and we had reached, as I said, until verse 248. So I'm just going to first finish this idiomatic and literal translation starting from verse 249, and then after that inshallah we'll proceed to the next section of verses. But before we do that, let's, as I said, proceed to finish off the idiomatic and literal translation. فَلَمَّا فَصَلَ طَالُوتُ بِالْجُنُودِ قَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مُبْتَلِيكُمْ بِالنَّهَرِ. فَلَمَّا, fa is a particle, of course, which means therefore. Lamma is when. Fasala means when he marched or he went left. Talut, of course, is Talut. And bil junud, junud is the plural of jund, and junud actually refers to armies. And so jund is singular and junud is plural. So idiomatically we can say that when Talut marched off with his army. So, and what did he say? In qala inna Allaha mubtalikum bin-nahar. He said, inna, indeed, Allah, God, mubtalikum, he will be putting you to test. So mubtali he's a person, someone who's going to put you to test, and kum, of course, is referring to the pronoun directly, people who are in front of them. So Talut is addressing them and telling them that God has made up his mind to test you bin nahar, through a river, or in fact you can translate this as a rivulet as well, because nahar, of course, also refers to a small river. So what is the test? That is described in the very next word. It says, faman shariba minhu falaysa minni. Fa, therefore, man, who, shariba, drinks, minhu, from it. Fa, therefore, laysa, not, minni, from me. So the test is that you will not drink from that rivulet. So the words are faman, so he who, shariba minhu, drinks from it, falaysa minni, he will not belong to us, or he will not belong to me, which means that he is not my associate. I will disown him. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَطْعَمْهُ فَإِنَّهُ مِنِّي. Wa, and man, who, lam, not, yat'amhu, will drink it, فَإِنَّهُ, therefore he, minni, from me. So the opposite is now stated. So he who will not drink will be from me, which means he will be my companion. So فَمَنْ شَرِبَ مِنْهُ فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. Whoever drinks from that rivulet will not belong to me. He'll not be my associate. I'm going to disown him. However, who is not going to drink from it, mal lam. So lam is the particle of negation. So he who does not, yat'amhu, the word ta'am actually means to taste. So yat'amhu would means who does not taste it, who is referring to the nahar or to the rivulet. So he who does not taste from this rivulet, fa innahu, so fa, therefore innahu, he, indeed he. So inna is indeed, who is he. So therefore indeed he, minni, is from me. Illa is except. Man, he, ightarafa ghurfatan biyadihi, except he who takes a palmful from his hands. So ightarafa ghurfa basically is to take a small portion اغترف غرفة بيده, from his hand. So it's like saying that only a person who sips a palmful, that is fine, but he should not drink to his own content. So now the result of this is mentioned. فَشَرِبُوا مِنْهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِنْهُمْ. Therefore, sharibu, they drank, minhu, from it, illa, except, qalilan minhum, very few of them. So the test that was presented before them was they should not drink any water except if they would end up drinking a palmful. But what happened was that they ended up drinking, a very large portion of the army ended up drinking. So this is how in the Arabic language things are. I mean, in a simple sentence construction that we are commonly used to, we would have said that only a few people only a few people were those who abstained from drinking and who followed Talut's advice. This is a simple sentence, but this is not how Arabic would do it, especially the Arabic of the Quran. So the structure is فَشَرِبُوا مِنْهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِنْهُمْ. They drank from it except a few. So this is a very special style of the Quran. Of course, the meaning is the same, that only a few people were the ones who abstained, and most of them drank from that rivulet, which means that they failed the test. فَشَرِبُوا مِنْهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِنْهُمْ فَلَمَّا جَاوَزَهُ. Falamma, you can see that this very verse started off with falamma as well. The falamma is right up there and falamma is here repeated. So, therefore, lamma, when jawazahu, he crossed it. Jawaza is to cross. Who is that nahar, or that river, or that rivulet? Falamma jawazahu huwa. Huwa refers to Talut. Wa, and allazina, those, amanu, professed faith, ma'ahu, with him. Ma'a is with, who is him. So when Talut crossed that river together with those who were with him who had professed belief, so what happened? They said, qalu, they said, la, not taqata, we don't have the power. So they said, la taqata lana, we do not have the power, al-yawm, today, bijalut, against Goliath. So Goliath was of course the general of the opposing army, and he was supposed to be, or he's described in the Bible as a very fierce fighter. So he was pitched against Saul's army, and this is how Saul's army responded. He said, well, if you've now crossed the river, but they felt depleted and they felt exhausted at the same time, and of course they did not have that courage to face that huge army. So what they said was, la taqata lana al-yawma, we do not have today the taqat, the power, bijaluta wa junudihi, to face Jalut or Goliath, as the Bible says, wa junudihi, and his armies. So qala allazina yadhunnuna annahum mulaqu bi rabbihim. So qala, said, allazina, those who, yazunnuna, desired or expected, annahum, that they would, anna, that, whom they, mulaqullah, they will be meeting God. Kam min fi'atin qalilatin, how many, min fi'atin, a group, qalila, which is small. So how many a group which is small, ghalabat, became dominant, fi'atan kathira, over a large group, bi'iznillah, with the permission of God or with the grace of God. So the whole context is that when they crossed the river, they said that we don't have the courage to face Goliath and his armies. But some of them, it is clear from the Quran that some of them, they differed from this majority, and they said that, and the Quran specifies that these were the people who had the hope that they will be meeting God. Yazunnuna annahum mulaqullah, which means that they were the ones that who had that faith in God that they're going to meet Him. So they did not say these words that we don't have the power to face Goliath. Instead, look at what they said to that weak section that had responded by saying that we cannot fight Goliath. They said that many a time it happens with the grace of God that a very small group defeats a larger group. So this is how the believers in them, or the people who had stronger faith within the army of Saul, who's called Talut here, had said. So literally, kam min fi'atin, kam, how many, min, from, fi'atin, group, kalila, small. So how many from a small group, ghalabat, become dominant, fi'atan kathira, over a larger group. Fi'a is group, kathira is large. Bi'iznillah, with the grace of God. Wallahu ma'as sabirin, wa, and Allah, God, ma, with as-sabirin, those who persevere or those who are patient. So these people were trying to inspire the people who had lost their own courage, and they said that we could not face Goliath and his army. So instead, they were told by the smaller group that it happens that many a time you face a larger army. So of course referring to Goliath's army, and with the help of God, you are able to defeat that larger army. And Wallahu ma'as sabirin, these are the words which actually portray this fact that God is with those who persevere. So basically, this is like an inspirational speech that was given by them, that don't think that because you're small in number, you'll not be able to overcome Goliath. No, this is not the case. If you have that strong trust in God, you can, if you persevere in His cause, and remember, God is going to be with you. Ma'as sabirin, people who persevere. So, وَلَمَّا بَرَزُوا لِجَالُوتَ وَجُنُودِهِ قَالُوا رَبَّنَا أَفْرِغْ عَلَيْنَا. Wa, and lamma, when. Barazu li Jaluta. So Barazu li Jaluta would mean when they faced Jalut or they faced Goliath. Barazu, came across or encountered. Li Jalut, Goliath. Wa, and Junudihi, and his armies. Qalu, they said, Rabbana, O God, O our God, Afrigh, pour on us. Afrigh in fact means pour, and alayna is on us. Sabr, perseverance. Wa, and thabbit aqdamana. Thabbit means to make ourselves strong, and aqdamana, of course, referring to feet. Make us strong in our feet. Of course, this is an idiomatic expression meaning that ground us, give us this courage. Wa, and unsurna. Unsurna, give us help. Ala, over. Al-Qawm, the nation. Al-Kafirin, who are disbelievers. So it seems that these people amongst the army of Saul or Talut, who had inspired the majority who had just thought that we will lose and we will not be able to encounter or fight Goliath. So they not only said that many a time a small group is able to prevail with God's help over a larger group, and when these people actually came in and encountered Goliath and his armies, what did they say? Rabbana, O our Lord, afrigh alayna, pour on us, sabr, which means pour on us patience. This is a very special style of Arabic, of course. In our own language, pouring is not associated with patience. When we say you pour something, of course, you can talk about rain pouring down, you can talk about pouring from one utensil to another utensil. The word pour is used generally in this way. In our language, but in Arabic, when we say afrigh, it means that simply drench us with. So afrigh alayna sabran would mean drench us with perseverance. So this is how they said. They first inspired the lot who had lost courage, and then when they faced Goliath, they said, okay, we have done our best. Now it's the time to raise our hand in prayer, because this is how God helps us, that we have to do our best, and then it is God's turn to help us. So this is precisely what they did. They faced Goliath, and then they raised their hands in prayer and said, Oh God, pour on us this patience, drench us with patience and perseverance. And I've been explaining this all along this exegesis, that this word sabr has a very special meaning, because contrary to its Urdu meaning, in which it generally refers to a weakness, sabr actually here refers to the fact to face a challenge in a steadfast way, to be a person who stares the adversity in its eye and does not get or does not lose heart. So afrigh alayna sabran literally would mean, oh God, drench us with steadfastness. Wasabbit aqdamana, and make us strong on our feet, which means, of course, that make us courageous. Wansurna ala al-qawm al-kafirin. Wa, as I just said, and unsurna, you help us, ala, against, al-qawm, nation, kafirin, disbelievers, and you help us against this disbelieving nation, referring to Goliath and his army. So next, it depicts what was the result of this prayer. It seems that the prayer was immediately accepted. So the words are فَهَزَمُوهُمْ بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. فَهَزَمُوهُمْ Bi-iznillah would mean hazama means that they conquered, they were able to prevail. And hazamu is a plural. Hum is referring to a pronoun, of course, referring to people who were they fought against. For hazamuhum, so they defeated them. Bi-iznillah, with God's grace. Izn is used in various meanings in the Arabic language. It's used to connote permission. It is used to also denote the grace and leave of God. So bi-iznillah would mean that they defeated the army of Goliath with God's grace. وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ وَآتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْمُلْكَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَعَلَّمَهُ مِمَّا يَشَاءُ. And now what happened was وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ, wa and Qatala killed, Dawood David, Jalut Goliath. So I had explained this already, that in Saul's army, David the prophet, who was the prophet, of course, who was the father of Solomon, he was one of the soldiers, and he had requested, as we know from the Bible, that he should be given the chance to fight Goliath. And we know that Goliath was a very fierce and a very hugely built person. But it seems from the Bible that David was able, as the Quran has also said, that David challenged him, and he actually used his catapult, a small catapult, and he was able to kill Goliath. So, Qatala Davudu Jaluta, and David killed Goliath. David killed Jalut. Wa and Atahu, Atahullah, Ata means gave, who? Him, Allah, God. And God gave him, God gave Goliath, God gave David. And what did he give him? Al-Mulk. Mulk means sovereignty and a kingdom. Wa and Al-Hikmah, wisdom. Wa and Allamahu, and he taught him, which means God taught David, mimma, from what? Yasha, he wanted. So, وَقَتَلَ دَاوُودُ جَالُوتَ وَآتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْمُلْكَ. So, David killed Goliath, and God bestowed upon David a kingdom, mulk, kingdom, and wisdom, and he taught him whatever he wanted. And this, of course, refers to what we know from other parts of the Quran, that David was able to converse with the birds. He understood the language of the birds, and this is how he specially communicated as well. So God gave him this special power of speech, or power of understanding speech of the birds. So not only did he bestow him with a grand kingdom, he bestowed him with wisdom as well. And at other instances in the Quran, we also see glimpses of this wisdom being displayed. So here it is just mentioned as a passing comment. And then there is this principal statement which is given, وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسَ بَعْدَهُمْ بِبَعْدٍ, which means wa and law, if, la, not. Daf'ullah, which means that God drives away or pushes away. Daf is to push. Allah, God pushes. An-nas, people. Ba'dahum, some of them. Bib'ad, from others. La fasadatil ard. Walakin allaha zu fadlin alal alameen. So, what is meant here is that if God does not drive away people, some from the other, which means that it is through this conflict between people, these warring people, that at times that God has to check the corruption of nations. So when wars are fought, one of the reasons is that God gives the chance to people who side by good, who are righteous, to prevail over people who are evil. So this is how the Almighty has explained it, that had God not been in this practice of pushing or driving one people away from the other through these wars, this world would have been filled with fasad, with disorder. La fasadatil ard. Fasad, of course, means to create disorder. Al ard, in the world. So, la fasadatil ardu, walakinna allaha zu fadlin alal alameen. Walakinna, but Allah, God, zu fadlin, is full of grace. Ala, on, al alameen, the world. And I've also discussed this elsewhere, that at times in the Arabic language, the plural is always not, it does not always come for something which is more than one in number. It also refers to the vastness of something. So in many places in the Quran where you'll find this word al-alameen, it is not appropriate to translate it at all in all these occasions as worlds, as is generally done. So the word alameen or the word alameen also refers to the vastness of this world. So the plural al-alameen is referring to the vastness of this world, and this is how this usage of the plural is. I think I've given you this example earlier on as well. Al-mashariq, al-magharib. So the word mashariq al-magharib, of course, is the plural of mashriq. We don't have several easts and we don't have several wests, but of course when the Quran speaks of al-mashariq, it is referring to the vastness of the east, and when it speaks of al-magharib, it is actually referring to the vastness of the maghrib or the west. So this is a usage of the Quran that you should come used to as well, that plural not always connotes something which is more in number, it also connotes vastness, as is the case here. So the closing statement is that had God not driven one people from another, which means he had not let other people, some people fight with another people, and as a result let one faction prevail. Had this not happened, God says this world would have been filled with corruption, with disorder. But because God is full of grace, he allows it to happen. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ ذُو فَضْلٍ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ. God is gracious to the people of this world. And also another thing that might be of interest to you to note, that when the Almighty is talking about the world, of course, it is like speaking of what the locus contains. So the locus, of course, is this world, but this world, of course, it consists of people. So many a time the locus is spoken, but the intention is to speak about people who are found in that locus or what that locus contains. So it's like saying that God is gracious to the people of the world, to the people of this vast world. Tilka ayatullahi natluha alayka bilhaq. Tilka, these, ayatullah, God's revelations. Ayat is the plural of ayat, so ayatullah would mean God's verses or God's revelations. Natluha, that we are reciting. Natlu, reciting, ha, referring to those verses. Alayka, on you. On you, of course, referring to the Prophet. Allah is on, ka is you. So again, this is referring to the fact that Almighty is reciting His verses on you, O Prophet, bilhaq. Bilhaq would mean with the truth. So tilka ayatullahi natluha alayka bilhaq wa innaka laminal mursaleen. Wa, and innaka, indeed you. La is something that comes as a particle on a word which is to be emphasized, and it often comes when the word inna is used. So the word inna has been used by innaka, it's appended to the word ka. So the la is actually something that further stresses something. So innaka laminal mursaleen would mean that, and you indeed are from among those who are sent, which means that you are among the messengers. So mursaleen means those who are sent. Of course, those who are sent does not mean that they are just sent. It means they are sent as messengers. So wa innaka laminal mursaleen. Tilka ayah, and this verse is of course referring to the fact that this part of history that we have narrated before you, the part referring to how David killed Goliath and how Saul's army marched off and how they were put to test through this river and how most of them failed, but a very small minority, they said that, well, you must not lose hope. Many a time, small number of people defeat a large number of people. You only need to be steadfast. And we know that they prayed to God to make them steadfast. And the result was that that small army was able to overcome the large army of Goliath. And David, who was a soldier in Saul's army, he was able to kill Goliath. And then the Quran says that we bestowed on him a great kingdom and wisdom, and of course some other disciplines of knowledge as well. So this part of history, of course, is something, if you read it in the Bible, you'll find some discrepancies, especially the test which is mentioned here. It is mentioned in a very crooked way. In the Bible, we know that it has been tampered with, especially the historical part. So the Quran, when it makes this correction, often it ends with this speech or with this sentence that these are the revelations of God that we are reciting to you with the truth, which means that now this is the correction that the Quran is making on the biblical account. وَإِنَّكَ لَمِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ, and there is no doubt that you are from amongst people who are sent as messengers. So before I move forward to the next part that we will do regarding our literal and idiomatic translation, if you have any questions regarding the literal and idiomatic translation of what we have done so far, please raise them. تِلْكَ الرُّسُلُ فَضَّلْنَا بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Now, the next part says, Tilka Rusul. Tilka, these are Rusul. Rusul is the plural of Rasul. So tilka rusul would mean these messengers. Faddalna, we gave them superiority. Faddalna, we gave them superiority. Na is God telling us that we gave them superiority. Ba'dahum ala ba'd, some of them upon some. And again, this is a very specific and a peculiar style of the Quran. It would not say that we gave superiority of one to the other, or we made some superior to the other. This is how the Quran would speak. Faddalna ba'dahum ala ba'd. We gave superiority of some to over others. Minhum, min from whom, them, man who, kallamallahu, God spoke. Kallama, spoke. And Allah, God. Wa, and rafa'a, raised. Ba'dahum, some of them. Darajat, their status, and He raised them to a lofty status. So the sense that has been conveyed here is that these are the messengers about whom we are going to tell you that some of them we made them relatively superior to the other. Again, once again, this very common thematic structure of the Quran is before you, and this theme also is recurrent, that there is no absolute superiority amongst prophets of God. Of course, there does exist relative superiority. So it is mentioned, minhum man kallam Allah. There were some with whom God conversed, with whom God spoke. Of course, referring to Moses. وَرَفَعَ بَعْدَهُمْ darajat, and others whom He raised to a lofty status. Rafa, to raise. Ba'dahum, some of them, darajat, in status. Although no one is particularly pointed out here, but we can see that some of them had this great status. For example, Abraham, who was the progenitor of a huge section of people, and he had true descendants, two lines of descendants, one the Ishmaelites and the other the Israelites. So in general, referring to many other prophets. And then it says, وَآتَيْنَا عِيسَى ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ. Wa, and Atayna, we gave. Atayna, we gave. God saying that we gave. Isa, Jesus, Ibn Maryam, son of Mary. Al-Bayyinat. Al-Bayyinat means clear signs. And Bayyinat is also a plural. So basically, Bayyinat is the plural and its singular is Al-Bayyina. Atayna Isa ibn Maryam al-Bayyinat would mean, and we gave Jesus, son of Mary, clear signs. وَأَيَّدْنَاهُ بِرُوحِ الْقُدُسِ. وَأَيَّدْنَاهُ would mean, and we helped him. So ayyada means to help. Ayyadnahu, we helped who? Him. So we helped him. بِرُوحِ الْقُدُسِ, with the Holy Spirit. Ruh is the Spirit. Qudus, of course, is someone who's sacred, someone who's holy. So again, the sense that this verse is conveying is that these are messengers of God. Some of them have superiority in some part of their personality and some in other part, but there is no absolute superiority. So with Moses, God conversed. So in this matter, Moses has this distinction that he is the only prophet with whom the Almighty spoke. And then the example is given of Jesus, son of Mary, that we gave him clear signs, which means that the Almighty bestowed on him those miracles that we find being mentioned in the Quran at other instances. For example, he was able to raise the dead back to life, which is a miracle which is unparalleled. And of course, we know that these miracles that were given to Jesus had a very special place, and that is that he was the last of the Israelite prophets. For 2,000 years or so, prophets had come amongst them one after the other, and the Israelites were still lulled in their slumber, and it was to awake them from this slumber that Jesus, the last of the Israelite prophets, was given with these miraculous powers, and there could be nothing more miraculous than bringing the dead back to life. Then this is what he did. So and this is how it has been said here. Atayna Isa ibn Maryam al-Bayyinat, that we gave Jesus clear signs, and وَأَيَّدْنَاهُ بِرُوحِ الْقُدُسِ, and we helped him with the Holy Spirit. And this is something, again, you'll find occurring at many instances in the Quran, that he helped them with the Holy Spirit, again referring to the fact that the Almighty deputed Gabriel to specially help him in certain tasks that were being done. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَقْتَتَلَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ بَعْدِهِمْ. Wa, and low, if sha'a, wanted, Allah, God, ma, not, iqtatala. Iqtatala means to fight. Alladhina, those, min ba'dihim, after them, min ba'di ma ja'athumul bayyinat, after ma, that ja'athum, came to them, al-bayyinat, clear signs, walakin, but, ikhtalafu, they differed, faminhum, so some of them, therefore min, from, whom, them, so some of them, man amana means who professed faith, wa minhum man kafar, and minhum, and from among them, man who kafar, disbelieved. Walau sha'a Allahu maqtatalu, wa, and law, if sha'a, wanted, Allah, God, maqtatalu, they would not have fought. Walakinna Allah yaf'alu ma yurid, walakinna, but Allah, God, yaf'alu, does, ma, what, yurid, he wants. So what is being said here is that this is how the Almighty, when He sent His prophets, the purpose of His sending these prophets and messengers was to guide mankind, and at times they were equipped with these distinctive features so that people could lend an ear and realize that these are God's emissaries. So people after them, who were the descendants, who were their followers, in fact, they did not stick to their own prophet in the way that they would like, that God had liked. That of course would mean that they would not express the superiority of their own prophet with other people. But on the contrary, what happened was that this relative superiority became a bone of contention between people, and they started to argue with one another that our prophet is greater than yours, and this led to a lot of wars. So upon this, the Quran is commenting, وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَقْتَتَلَ الَّذِينَ مِن بَعْدِهِمْ. Had God wanted, they would not have fought with one another on this race for superiority, had God wanted. But what does God do? وَلَكِنِ اخْتَلَفُوا. So God has given people the choice, the freedom to choose what they do. Hence, He does not interfere. So, فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ آمَنَ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ كَفَرَ. Some of them accepted faith and some of them did not, and they disbelieved, because God has left them to do what they would want. Had God wanted, He would not have made these people fight, but that would be imposing His will on people. So He did not impose His will. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَقْتَتَلَ الَّذِينَ مِن بَعْدِهِمْ. Had He wanted, these people would not have fought, especially مِن بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَتْهُمُ الْبَيِّنَاتِ, in the presence of these miracles, these signs. But وَلَكِنِ اخْتَلَفُوا. They still differed. These nations, they still differed, and they fought with one another to prove the superiority of one over the other. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ آمَنَ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ كَفَرَ. Because God has given this choice to people to accept what they want and to reject what they want. So some of them accepted and some of them disbelieved. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَقْتَتَلُوا. So this phrase is once again repeated. Wa, and law, if, sha'a, wanted, Allah, God, ma, not, iqtatalu, fought. So had they wanted, they would not have fought. Now, I'd like to also focus your attention or direct your attention to the translation done by Ustaz Ghamidi, so that it will become evident to you that they are once again rejecting the Prophet who has come before them. So please do concentrate on the translation, especially the parts which you can see in the brackets. So it says, but God did not want to force people to the right path. They disagreed amongst themselves. The same thing that I just mentioned, that God did not want to impose His will. He gave the freedom of choice to people, and they disagreed amongst themselves. Thus some among them professed faith in these messengers and some rejected them. They are rejecting you, O Prophet, for the same reason as well. And had God wanted, they would never have fought against one another, but according to His wisdom, God does what He pleases. So once again, this practice that was rampant in the past is repeated, that they are rejecting you, a prophet, for the same reason as well. And what is that reason? That they would like their own prophet to be regarded as superior. So it is the same thing which is continuing. And remember, the Jews, they never accepted the prophet because they of course thought that their own prophet is superior. And similar is the case with some other nations. So now this phrase has been repeated by addressing the ummah at hand, who was standing right in front of the Quran, that had God now also wanted, He would have held their hand. He would have not let them fight. But this is not how God has planned this world. He has given choice. He's given freedom to people. So he lets them do what they want. Of course, this is something which is based on his wisdom. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَفْعَلُ مَا يُرِيدُ. But God does what he wants, and what he wants, of course, is based on his wisdom. Now, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَنْفِقُوا مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاكُم مِّن قَبْلِ أَن يَأْتِيَ يَوْمٌ لَا بَيْعٌ فِيهِ وَلَا خُلَّةٌ وَلَا شَفَاعَةٌ وَالْكَافِرُونَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Believers, leave them to themselves and spend of what we have given you. So, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, O you who believe. Now, you must have now become very familiar with this expression, which occurs several times, scores of times in the Quran. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, O you who have professed faith. It's like an address. It's like calling out to people. Now, of course, people who are standing right in front of the Quran, it's like the Almighty addressing them and telling them, O you who have believed. Now, what is the command that is given to them? Anfiqu mimma razaqna. Anfiqu is spend in charity. Anfiqu, spend in charity. Mimma, from that. Razaqnakum, we have given you. So God is telling them that please, now you leave these people to themselves. They have, their fate is now sealed. They are fighting against you because we have given the choice that either they accept you or they reject you. For those who are not accepting you, they will face their own destiny very soon. But now, as far as you are concerned, you should concentrate on the society that is now being established before you. So the believers are now addressed, and they are told that you must spend in charity of what we have given you. So the Almighty is addressing the believers and telling them, O you who have believed, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, anfiqu, spend, mimma razaqnakum, from what we have given you. Min qabl, before, an ya'tiya, comes to you, or comes, yawmun, a day, la bayun fihe, in which there will be no bargaining, wala, and not, khulla. Khulla means friendship, wa, and la, not, shafa means intercession. So the sense is that believers spend in charity from what we have given you. Anfiqu mimma razaqnakum min qable, before that day arrives. Before that day arrives, in which there will be no bargaining. La bayun fihe, there will be no bargaining in it. Fihe, fi is in, he is it. So fihe, in it. Wala khulla, and there shall be no friendship. Wala shafa'a, and there will be no intercession. So all these three things which can maybe work for people in this world will no longer be there for people in the next world. So we are used to friendships. We know that our friends will help us. We know that bargaining is something that will win us over certain things that we would like to achieve. We also know that people can intercede for us in this world and therefore win certain favors for us. But this is something God has totally struck off as far as the hereafter is concerned. It says, Min qabli an ya'tiya yawmun la bayun fihi wala khullatun wala shafa'a. So spend of the wealth that we have given you before that day arrives, in which there will be no bargaining, no friendship, and no intercession. Wal kafiruna humul zalimun. Wal kafirun, these rejectors. And remember, the rejectors, of course, are the ones who have rejected the Prophet, who have rejected ultimately the message that has come to them. So a point that we have to know and note as well is that the arrival of the last Prophet was predicted in the previous scriptures, and we know from the Quran that the name of Prophet Muhammad was mentioned in these scriptures. So it says that that the name of Prophet Muhammad is mentioned, and it was mentioned in the Tawrat and in the Injil. He was mentioned by his name. So therefore they were waiting for him, but they were the people who, instead of welcoming him, they became guilty of rejecting him. And that is why the Quran says, Wal kafiruna humul zalimun, that the rejectors of that day are the ones who are unjust to their souls. Of course, referring to the fact that before that day arrives, in which there shall be no intercession or friendship or any bargaining, remember, this is a day in which you will be held accountable and you will be alone. And it is these disbelievers who are the wrongdoers, because now they have decided to reject the hereafter. And now comes that famous verse of the Quran that we are all very well aware of, the verse of the throne, which is one of the best introductions to the Almighty. So if you have to introduce God to your children, to your people who might want to know how God is addressed or discussed in the Quran, this is a very comprehensive introduction. Yes, there are other instances as well, but you'll find this to be one of the very, very comprehensive ones. So it says, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. Allah, God, la, not, ilaha, God, illa, except, who, He. So there is no God except He. Allahu la ilaha illa, there is no deity except Him. There is no God except Him. Al-hayyu, al-hayyu means He's living. Al-qayyum, He is the sustainer. So qayyum has this meaning of not only that He is Himself living, but He is also responsible of bringing other people into existence. So He's existing Himself and He's responsible of making other people exist. This is the sense of qayyum. Al-hayyul qayyum. So He is the living and He is the one who sustains. La, not. Ta'khuzuhu sinatun. Sina means sleep. Or we can say it's slumber actually. So sina is a lesser form of sleep, or you can say a shorter sleep. La, not. Ta'khuzuhu, He is overcome. Sinatun, with slumber. Wa, and la, not. Naum is sleep. So neither slumber nor sleep. He is not overcome by neither slumber nor by sleep, which means that He is all the time watching over us. Lahu, la, for, who, Him. Ma, that, fi, in. As-samawat. As-samawat is the plural of as-sama. So for Him is what is in the heavens. Lahu, for Him. Ma, what? Fi, in. As-samawat, in the heavens. So for Him is what is in the heavens. Wa, and. Ma, what? Fil ard, in the earth, or in our land. So whatever is in the earth, whatever is in the heavens and the earth, it belongs to Him. He is the master, He is the owner, He is the sustainer. Man zallazi yashfa'u indahu illa bi'izni. Man, who? Zallazi is the one. Yashfa'u, intercede. Indahu, with Him. Except. Illa is except. Bi'iznihi, with His permission. So who can intercede with Him for someone? So yashfa'u would mean man zallazi yashfa'u indahu. So who but He can intercede with Him for someone except by permission. So yashfa'u would mean He is able to intercede for someone in His presence or before Him except by His own permission. Illa, except. Bi'iznihi, permission. He is His, so His permission. Ya'lamu, He knows. Ma, what? Baina aydihim, what is before them. Aydihim, before them. Wa, and. Ma, that. Khalfahum, what is behind them. So what is before people and what is after them, referring to their past and their future. So He knows what is before them and He's known what is after them. Khalf is after, hum is them. Wala yuhituna, wa, and la, not. Yuhituna. Yuhituna means to have grasp. So wala yuhituna would mean and does not have grasp. Bishay'im. Bishay'im means of anything. Min ilmihi, of His knowledge. Illa bimasha, except what He wants. So the meaning would be that they cannot grasp anything of His knowledge except what He wants. In other words, what He would like to divulge before people, what He would like to bestow before people, only that is what He is going to give you, and you can obtain that. You cannot have that, all the knowledge that He's not going to give you all the knowledge, but only that part of the knowledge He's going to give you, and you can only take that part that He's trying to give you. You do not have access to many other things that He's not giving you at the moment. Wasi'a. Wasi'a means prevails. Kursiyu, His chair or His throne. Who, of course, is the pronoun. Kursiyu, His throne or His chair. As-samawat. So as-samawat means the heavens, and of course this word has just been used earlier on. Lahu ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard. So it's the same word as-samawat. It's the plural of as-sama. Wa, and ard is world. So wasi'a kursiyu, that His chair prevails, or His chair prevails over the heavens and the earth. Of course, this is a metaphorical use of the word chair. It means His dominion. It means His kingdom. So the word kursi, the word chair, as we know in different languages, it connotes power and authority, and precisely the same meaning is implied here, that His authority prevails on the heavens and the earth. Wala, wa, and la, not. Ya'uduhu. Ya'uduhu means he does not become tired. Ya'uduhu, he does not become tired. And what does he not become tired of? Hifdhuhuma, their protection. Huma is that dual pronoun referring to the heavens and the earth. So he does not get tired of protecting them. He is always watching over them. Wa and huwa, he indeed. Al-Ali. Al-Ali means glorious, someone has that special power. And Al-Azim he's the one who's great and who is exalted. So you can see, viewers, that this verse is a very beautiful introduction to the Almighty. It starts off with His power, the way that He's always living, and He shall always remain living. He's the one who has brought us into existence. He Himself is in existence. Neither slumber nor sleep overtakes Him, and whatever is in the heavens and the earth belongs to Him, and no one can grasp any part of His knowledge until He Himself would like it to be given to Him. No one can intercede before Him for other people. He knows what is in the past, He knows what is in the present, and His dominion prevails on the heaven and the earth, and He is always guarding them. He never ever becomes tired of guarding them, and He is the exalted and He's the glorious one. So this is an introduction given in such comprehensive words in these verses. La, not. Ikrah, compulsion. Fi, in. Ad-deen, religion. La ikrah fi ad-deen, there is no compulsion in religion. Qad, indeed. Tabayyana, has become evident. Tabayyana has become evident. Rushd, guidance. Min, from. Al-ghay, deviance. So, indeed, guidance has become evident from deviance. Qad tabayyana, indeed, tabayyana has become evident. Rushd, guidance. Min, from. Al-ghay, deviance or error. In other words, with the coming of the Quran, guidance has become absolutely evident. We know that what guidance stands for. فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ Fa, therefore, man, he. Yakfur, denies. Bit-taghut, taghut is used in the Quran for Satan. So he who denies Satan, who, in other words, renounces Satan. Wa, and. Yu'min. Yu'min means professes faith. Billah, in God. Faqad, therefore, istamsaka. Istamsaka means to hold on. Bil urwatil wusqa. Urwa means rope. Wusqa means strong. So what is meant here is that he who renounces Satan, فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ, he who disbelieves in Satan, and yu'min billah, professes faith in God, faqad, therefore, istamsaka bil urwatil wusqa, he has held on to a strong rope. La infisama laha, or lan fisama laha, which means this is something which can never break. Infisama means to break. La, not. Laha, for that. Wallahu, and indeed God. Wallahu, God. Sami'un alim. Sami means who hears, and alim means who knows. So God is someone who hears and knows all. So before I wrap off with the next 4 verses, if you have any questions until what we have, or up to what we have just studied, please raise them.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
So, with due respect, this besides 255, other ayahs after this ayah seem irrelevant to us, don't they? Because Allah has concluded this paragraph with this 255, which is very comprehensive. So, ayahs before that seem irrelevant to us, to me. So explain that to me, if you would, please.
Which are you referring to? Verse 254? You find irrelevant?
Yeah, before that, where Allah says, the people who did not believe in Allah and who they made differences among each other and all that. We have to, in order to be good moments, we have to believe in all the prophets and all the books. And then Allah Himself in 255, he kind of comprehensively tells us what what a good moment is. And then ayahs before that seem to me, I'm not, I cannot explain to you, they seem like they're irrelevant once we have.
I think what you're perhaps trying to say is that, I mean, of course, verses are not irrelevant, but perhaps they were not followed in letter and spirit by those to whom they were addressed. So God is just narrating a history. I mean, it's not that He is driving history. What He has said is that he gave certain powers to certain messengers, and each messenger might have a distinction, but there was no absolute superiority for any messenger. But people after them, instead of acknowledging this fact that yes, there is one distinction that their prophet has, and there could be another distinction which another prophet have, but they, instead of understanding this point of view, they started to regard their own prophets to be superior, and this led to wars between them. And had God wanted, He would not have let people fight. But because God does not drive people, He gives them the choice to do so. So therefore, He gave them this choice, and they fought with one another. So you see, this is basically a narration of history, that this is how it happened. And now, O Prophet, that you have arrived on the scene, this is going to happen again, because people don't accept new prophets easily. And now that you have arrived, you will once again find them fighting with one another. So therefore, don't get disheartened. This has been the pattern in history, and they were in fact waiting for you. But in spite of being in waiting for you, they are the first people to deny you. It just speaks of human audacity. It just speaks of how human beings, when they are given power and freedom and authority, they rebel against God. So that is how history has been. So the verse of the throne is just an introduction to God, and He's saying that in spite of this power, in spite of this might, as far as He is concerned, He does not interfere in this world by driving people to a particular decision. Yes, He's going to prevail on people in the next world. He's going to take them to account. But as far as this world is concerned, He has given them the choice to do whatever He wants to. So that is the whole test is all about.
Abrar, please go ahead, unmute your mic, ask your question.
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन है, जो आपने अभी बताया कि दीन कबूल करने में जबर नहीं है, तो फिर हमें अल्लाह पाक ये पाबंद क्यों करते हैं कि तुमने इन अहकाम को फॉलो करना है, और अगर फॉलो नहीं करोगे तो हम जहन्नुम में जाएंगे? तो ये भी तो एक तरह की ज़बरदस्ती होगी।
नहीं, इसका असल में मतलब ये है कि आप दीन पर आप में कोई ज़बरदस्ती का मतलब ये है कि आपको पे ठोसा नहीं जा रहा, आप पे लादा नहीं जा रहा। इसका मतलब ये है कि अगर आप समझते हैं इस्तदलाल से, तो उसको आप समझें। यानी एक चीज़ अल्लाह ताला आप पर फोर्स नहीं कर रहा, आपको चॉइस दे रहा है। तो ये जो कहा गया ला इकराह फि दीन, इसका मतलब ये है कि हिदायत के मामले में अल्लाह ताला आपको फोर्स नहीं कर रहा, आपको चॉइस दे रहा है कि आप इसको माने या ना माने। यानी अल्लाह ताला ने आपको इस तरह से पैदा नहीं किया कि वो आपको ज़बरदस्ती हिदायत देगा, ये आपको इसकी चॉइस दी जा रही है। तो इकराह इस चीज़ में है, इस चीज़ में नहीं है। ये बात कि नतीजा क्या निकलेगा, वो यहाँ ये ज़ेर बहस नहीं है। यहाँ तो ये बताया जा रहा है कि जो गाइडेंस है या हिदायत है, ये ज़बरदस्ती ठोंसी नहीं जा रही है आपके ऊपर। आप अपनी मर्ज़ी से इसको इख्तियार करें, अपनी मर्ज़ी से इसको ना इख्तियार करें, लेकिन करेंगे तो ये नतीजा निकलेगा, ना करेंगे तो ये नतीजा निकलेगा। ये एक अलग बहस है, यानी करना और ना करने का नतीजा अलग है। यहाँ तो सिर्फ ये बयान हो रहा है कि अल्लाह ताला ने आपको पैदाइशी तौर पे इस जगह पे नहीं फाइज कर दिया कि बस आपने जो उसने कह दिया उसको मानना ही है, आपको इसकी चॉइस दी है। हाँ, उस चॉइस का नतीजा जो निकलेगा वो निकलेगा, वो अलग से बात है, उसका ताल्लुक इस इकरार से नहीं है।
Adil Qureshi, please ask your question.
Thank you. So, sir, if we take a look at ayah number 253, in the ayah number 253, Allah Almighty seems to be repeating the words about aqtatal. Walau sha'allahu maqtatal allazina min qabl, and again he says walau sha'allahu maqtatalu. Now, the first qatl, the first people who he is referring to, as per Ghamidi Saab's translation, and I think the same translation you are using, is that this is referring to the previous nations, and the
Yes.
second Allahu Maqtatalu is referring to the current nation of the
Yes.
Prophet, peace be upon him. How was he able to arrive at this conclusion? Because the repetition of this word would not have made sense otherwise, or are there hints within the Arabic sentence itself that the second Aqtatalu means Quraysh, and the first first I think is clear that it does refer to previous nations. But how did he arrive that the second one refers to his prophet's nation and not the repetition of the previous one?
I think it's again a matter of common sense as well, that the repetition has to have some sense to it. I mean, it could not have been a repetition of the previous instance, because that would have been sheer repetition. So the only logical outcome is that because the Quran is now being revealed to a group of people standing right in front of them, And this often happens that the past is then related to the present. So there was a past in which how people behaved, and now that past is being related to what people are now going to behave. And this is a very common structure of the Quran, that how the past has happened of course, but of course how is that relevant to the present. So this is bringing that relevance to this verse, that what they did in the past is nothing what they are now going to do. And that is how I think he has related it. Of course, I've never questioned him on this, but this is how my understanding is. And another hint that I can find is in the previous phrase, it says, وَلَكِنْ اخْتَلَفُوا فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ آمَنَ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ كَفَرَ. That these people in the past, when they, in spite of the signs that had arrived before them with these prophets, they were given this choice, and some of them accepted and some of them did not. So, O Prophet, now it's not going to be something different for your case as well. So I think this is how probably he has arrived at this conclusion.
Right. So in the same ayah, there is another sort of potential similar meaning words that I'm seeing. Tilka rusulu fazzalna ba'zahum ala ba'z,
Right.
and rafa ba'zahum darajat. Are these two not very similar words? It seems like repetition, or there is a difference between fazl and the rafa darajat.
So basically, you see, the starting clause is just a general introduction to what's going to come ahead. So tilka rasulu faddalna ba'dahum ala ba'd is just a introductory, it's like a introductory sentence or an introductory clause, that these are the messengers about whom we are going to narrate to you, that some were given superiority in one sense or the other. And once two of these messengers are recounted, Moses and Jesus, there is a general line given that we raise the ranks of some above the other. So rafa ba'dahum darajat actually would mean that we raised them. I mean, again, there is this subtle indication which does to me point to Abraham and how his rank was raised, and how actually after passing through various tests, he was given this special status. So it does seem to me that although not in words, but it's referring to Prophet Abraham. And of course, it's not just Abraham, because this is basically a plural that is suggested here. The words are that we raise the ranks of some as well. So it does seem to me that, like Abraham and some other prophets of God who were given a very, very special status, they are being referred to here.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Akram Bhatti, you can ask a question.
Yes, ma'am. Sir, I have a small question about the Ibrahim Islam and Anbiya Karam prior to him. That Allah says, I'll make you Imam of all the Anbiyas. I can understand that he was the Imam of all the, Bani Israel and Bani Ismail prophets. But how about the prophets that came before him, like the Nuh al-Islam and all that? He's not leader of them, is he?
No, of course not. So you see, the word leader is spoken of Abraham, I mean, in a very particular context, and that is that Abraham and his progeny would be given a special status. So that is just related to people after him or prophets after him. Before him, I mean, is not even under question. So if Abraham had a very special status, it is because he was a Semite, and it was the Semitic race which was then chosen after the Hamites to rule the world, and it was from the Semites that our Prophet Muhammad and other prophets of God rose. So Abraham, being a Semitic prophet, is given this distinction. But of course, as you said, that this comparison cannot be made to previous prophets of God. This is just his special status, because we know that about them, or the progeny of Abraham, the law of the Almighty is that if they obey his command and they are just, then the Almighty will make them prevail over the rest of the nations. But if they do not do so, then they will be severely punished. And we can see that punishment going on today as well. So the progeny of Abraham was given a very special status, and Abraham himself, of course, had that status as well. But as I said, this is something.
Is that fair to say that Anbiya Karam prior to him have their own ranking? So that does not.
Of course, yes, that is very fair to say.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Saima Khan, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. मेरा सवाल ये है कि कुरान के अंदर हमें मतलब एडवाइस किया गया है कि रात के अंधेरे से डरना चाहिए और जो दिन है उसके अंदर आपको अपने जो काम है कमाने के और उसके करने चाहिए, मगर आज के हम जिस दौर में रह रहे हैं वहाँ तो काफी सारी जॉब्स ऐसी हैं जो दिन का टाइम ही रात में होता है और आप उनको रात में ही कर सकते हैं, दिन में उसकी
जी
पॉसिबिलिटी नहीं आती।
देखिए, कुरान मजीद ने ये नहीं कहा कि अंधेरे से डरना चाहिए, ये तो नहीं कहा। ये कहा है कि अंधेरे के शर से अल्लाह ताला की हिफाजत में रहना चाहिए। ये तो बिल्कुल और बात है ना। औज़ु बिरब्बिल फलक मिन शर्रि मा खलक व मिन शर्रि गासिकिन इज़ा वक़ब। अंधेरा जब वो छा जाए, तो चूंकि अंधेरे में ज़ाहिर है बहुत सारी एक्टिविटीज़ इंसान कर सकता है, तो ये नहीं कहा गया कि आप अंधेरे से डरें। ये कहा गया कि अंधेरे में जो नुकसान आपको पहुँच सकता है उससे अल्लाह की पनाह मांगें, अल्लाह की रिफ्यूज में आएँ। तो ये तो आपको दुआ के लिए कहा गया है, डरने के लिए नहीं कहा गया। आप सारी एक्टिविटीज़ करें अंधेरे में। और ज़ाहिर है कि अंधेरे से मुराद वो अंधेरा है जो बाहर का अंधेरा है। आप जब घर में अंदर होते हैं, ऑफिस में होते हैं या कहीं भी होते हैं जहाँ रोशनी है, वहाँ तो अंधेरा नहीं होता। तो यहाँ असल में रात का अंधेरा मुराद है। रात में ज़ाहिर आपको मालूम ही है अंधेरे में बहुत सारे सबवर्सिव एक्टिविटीज़ प्लान की जा सकती हैं, और वहाँ भी ये नहीं कहा गया कि आपको एक्टिविटी ना करें, बल्कि कहा गया कि अल्लाह ताला से हिफाजत की दुआ कीजिए जब आप अंधेरे में निकलें।
ओके, थैंक यू।
Thank you so much. Thank you. Dr. Saleem, there are no more questions at this time if you want to continue with the session.
So I think, yes, we will give more time to the participants later on. Just let me finish off the
Yeah.
remaining 3 or 4 verses.
Yes.
Okay. So, Allahu waliyul lazina amanu yukhrijuhum min adh-dhulumati ila an-nur. Allah, God, waliyu is a friend. Al-lazina, those, amanu, who profess faith. So God is the friend of those who profess faith. And yukhrijuhum, he takes them out. He takes them out. Yukhriju takes them, hum, them, min, from, az-zulumat, darkness, ila, towards, an-nur, light. Now you'll see that this word zulumat often occurs in the Quran, and again I just gave you this example that many a time when a word comes in the plural form, it does not always imply a larger number. So zulumat is a plural, and again it's referring to the vastness of that darkness. So yukhrijuhum min az-zulumat, precise translation would be that he takes them out from the vastness of darkness, ila, towards an-nur, towards light. Wa, and allazina, those who kafaru, rejected, awliya'uhum, their friend, at-taghut, is Satan. Yukhrijunahum, he takes them, min an-nur ila zulumat, from light into the vastness of darkness. So this is like an opposite thing, that God is the friend of the believers. He takes them out from the darkness into light, whereas those who have disbelieved, their friend is Satan, and he takes them from light into darkness. Ulaika ashabun nar. Ulaika, they. Ashab is the plural of sahib, and it means the companion. So ulaika ashabun nar. Ashabun nar would mean companions of the fire. Ulaika ashabun nar, they are the companions of the fire. Hum fiha khalidun. Hum, they, fiha, in it. Khalidun, forever. They will remain in it forever. So this verse basically tells us that God he befriends the believers. He takes them out from darkness and brings them into light. Whereas those who have disbelieved, their friend is Satan. Taghut is another word for Satan. And what does he do? Yukhrijunahum. He takes them out from light into darkness. So he leads them from light into darkness, which is in opposite to what God does. Ulaika ashabun nar. So these are the people of the fire. These are the companions of the fire. Hum fiha khalidun. They shall remain in it forever. Alam tara. Now comes a digression, slight an example of the previous 2 cases which are mentioned, that Satan brings people into darkness and God brings, on the contrary, people into light. So these 2 examples are now given as how God and Satan behaves. So first, this example from Satan, how he drives people into darkness. So alam tara ila allazi hajja. Alam means do you. Lam tara, see. Ila, towards. Allazi, he. Hajja, argued. Ibrahim, with Ibrahim. Fi, about. Rabbihi, his Lord. So have you seen that person who argued with Abraham about his Lord? Alam tara, have you seen ilallazi, or have you seen that person who argues with Abraham regarding his Lord. And what was that about? An atahullahul mulk, that God has given him the kingdom. So have you not seen that person who argued with Abraham about his Lord? And what was the reason? Because God had bestowed sovereignty upon him, or because God had bestowed kingdom upon him. Iz qala Ibrahimu Rabbi allazi yuhyi wa yumeet. When is when. Qala said. Ibrahimu, Abraham, Rabbi, my Lord, allazi, he who, yuhyi means give life, wa yumeet, and yumeet gives death. So have you not seen the person who disputed with Abraham about his Lord, because God had bestowed sovereignty upon him? And this, of course, is what Abraham has said. And Abraham said, my Lord is one who gives life and who gives death. But in reply, what did that person say who was bestowed with that kingdom? Ana uhyi wa umeet. Ana, I, uhyi, give life, wa umeet, and give death. It is I who give life and I who give death. And we know from history that the person implied here is Nimrod. We know he was one of the pharaohs, and he was the person against whom, not exactly a pharaoh, he had his own kingdom. Nimrod's kingdom is mentioned, we know, and in the Bible as well. So it was against him that Abraham was sent, and he argued with him, and he said that, well, I am the sovereign, I can give life and I can give death. So Abraham replied, Qala Ibrahim, Abraham said, Fa inna Allah, indeed God, Ya'ti brings, Ya'ti bishams, brings the sun, min from al-mashriq, the east, Fa'ti biha, you bring it, min al-maghrib, from the west. فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ. Buhita means astounded, or someone who becomes bewildered. فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي he kafar, who disbelieved. So this person, Nimrod, with whom Abraham was arguing, when he said that, well, God is the one who brings, or he makes the sun rise from the east every day. If you think that you are God, then why don't you make it rise from the west one day? فَأْتِ بِهَا مِنَ الْمَغْرِبِ. And when Abraham argued with him in such a way, فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ. So this person, he was totally bewildered. He had nothing to say. فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ. وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Wa, and Allah, God, la, not, yahdi, guidance. And God does not guide al-qawm, nation, al-zalimin, who are unjust. So God does not guide such unjust people. So this is the example of how Satan instigates a person and brings him into this contention that he is God himself, because he can give life and death. So instead of arguing with him, Abraham said, well, if you think that you are God, then why don't you make the sun rise from the west instead of the east? And he had nothing to say in reply. فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. أَوْ كَالَّذِي مَرَّ عَلَى قَرْيَةٍ وَهِيَ خَاوِيَةٌ عَلَى عُرُوشِهَا. Aw means or. Ka is the letter which makes something similar to another. So ka is mean similar. Allazi, to that person. Marra, who walked. Ala, upon. Marra ala is one word actually, who walked upon. Qarya is a village. Wa, and here it. Khawiyatun, it had fallen down. Ala, on. Urushiha, its roof. So urush is basically again the plural, and the singular is arsh. So urush mean that it had fallen upon itself, which means that the roof had fallen down. So aw kallazi marra ala qaryatin, or is the example of that person, marra ala qaryatin, who walked upon a village, or who passed by a village. And what was that village? It had fallen down on its roof. So the houses were totally razed to ground. That is what this verse means actually. Qala, he said, Anna, from where? Yuhyi hazihillahu ba'da mawtiha. How will you give life, or how will God give life to this after its death? Ba'da mawtiha. Anna, how? Yuhyi, bring life. Hazihi, to this. Allah, God. Ba'da, after. Mawtiha, after his death. So because that person had passed by a village that was totally grounded, or had been razed to ground, and people had been all killed there. So he said, well, look at these people, they have all died and how can these dead people be given life? That is what that person expressed his bewilderment about. فَأَمَاتَهُ اللَّهُ مِئَةَ آمٍ. Therefore, amata gave death to that person. So God gave death to that person, mi'ata amin, for 100 years. So for 100 years he gave death to that person, summa barasa, and then he gave that person life. So God, the person who was wondering that how can a village who has fallen to the ground and no one has been left alive, how can God give life to this village? So what happened was that God made that person die, فَأَمَاتَهُ اللَّهُ مِئَةَ آمٍ, for 100 years, summa ba'asa, and then he resurrected him. He actually gave that person life. And he said, قال, come, how much? Labista, you stayed. How long did you stay in this state? I mean, of course you were dead, and of course according to God he died for 100 years before he was given life. But his reply was, قال لبست يوما أو بعد يوم. Qala, he said, labistu, I was there in this state, yawman, for a day, aw ba'da yawm, or a small part of the day. So although he had died for 100 years, but when he was resurrected, he said that I just passed away, or I was not living for a day or a part of the day. So on the contrary, God said, qala, bal, in fact, labista, mi'ata amin, you stayed in this state for 100 years. Labista, you stayed. Mi'ata amin, mi'a is 100, am is year. Mi'ata amin, you stayed in this state for 100 years. Fanzur means take a look. Ila, towards. Ta'amika means your food. Wa, and. Sharabika means your drink. Lam yatasanna, they did not decay, they did not become stale. So God said that you stayed in this state for 100 years, but look at your food and your drink, they did not become stale. But on the contrary, wa, and unzur, look, ila, towards himarika. Himar means donkey, ka means your. So look at your donkey and how we bring it back to life. This is something which is, I'll try to explain later on, but wanzur ila himarika, of course, means that look at your donkey, and the later clauses tell us that how the Almighty is going to bring him back to life. And it says, وَلِنَجْعَلَكَ آيَاتًا لِلنَّاسِ وَانْظُرْ إِلَىٰ حِمَارِكَ. And look at your donkey, was just bones and he had just decayed. But look at how God is going to bring him back, so that وَلِنَجْعَلَكَ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ, so that نَجْعَلَكَ, I can make you, لِنَجْعَلَكَ, so that you become certain. لِنَجْعَلَكَ, so that you become certain. What? آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ. So that you can become certain that we make you a sign. وَلِنَجْعَلَكَ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ, and so that we can make you, لِنَجْعَلَكَ, we can make you, ayah is a sign, linnas, for people, so that we can make you a sign for people. Wa, and unzur, look, ila al-izam. Izam is the plural of azm, it means bone. So look at his bones, the bones of the donkey. Kaifa, how? Nunshizuha, we bring them together. The way we do them is that how we make them, we make them and make them together. Summa naksuha lahma, then naksuha, we clothe them. Naksu, to clothe them. Ha, them. Lahma, with flesh or with meat. So it says that now you look at that, how we look at your donkey, how we bring it back to life, and we make you a sign of hope for people, and observe how we raise or we resurrect the bones and then clothe them with flesh. Falamma, therefore, lamma, when, tabayyana, became evident, lahu, to him. So when it became evident to him, qala, he said, a'lamu, I know, anna, that, Allah, God, ala kulli shay'in qadir, on everything powerful. So I know that God has power over all things. So now I have no doubt. So basically, you can see that this is something which the Almighty has mentioned And he has told us that people who would not believe in the hereafter, or who would think that people cannot be raised back to life, this is how a whole episode took place in the times of this person. And we have discussed this earlier on in tafsir, that how a similar incident has been mentioned in the book of Ezekiel in the Bible as well. And you can see the quotation from here as well, and you can look up the Bible, how something very similar has been mentioned there as well. But the bottom line is that this is how God at times teaches people to know that if they have belief in God, they will understand that resurrecting them is something which is not a problem for him at all. And then finally we come to this last verse of the Quran, which says, وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ. Once again we find Abraham being figured in this example. So وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبِّ أَرِنِي كَيْفَ تُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى. Wa, and is when. Qala, said. Ibrahimu, Abraham. Rabbi, O Lord. Arini, show me. So, and remember when Abraham said, Lord, Rabbi, Arini, show me. Kaifa, how? Tuhyi, you give life. Al-Mauta, to the dead. So Mauta is the plural of Mayyit. So Mayyit is the singular and Mauta is plural. So remember when wa is qala means and remember, on recall. So this is an often recurring theme of the Quran also, or a very similar structure. You'll see that whenever past instances are referred to, you'll find them starting with this structure wa is, which means and recall and bring to mind. Of course, referring to the fact that this is how things happened in history. So, and bring to mind when Abraham said, Rabbi Arini, O God, O Lord, show me, Kaifa, how, Tuhyi, you give life, Al-Mauta, to the dead. So, Qala, God said, Avalam, do you not? Tu'min, do you not believe? Qala, Abraham said, Bala, indeed, Walakin, but, Liyatma'inna, to give satisfaction, Qalbi, to my heart. So basically Abraham said, oh God, show me how you bring people to life. At this, the Almighty gave this rejoinder that don't you believe me that I can do what I claim? Abraham did not dispute with this. He went on to say, God, I only want this satisfaction of my heart. Liyatma'inna qalbi. Qala, said, God said, Fakhuz, so therefore take hold. Arba means four. Minat tayr, from among the birds. Tayr is birds. Fasurhunna. Surhunna means make them or tame them or make them used to yourself or tame them towards yourself. Fasurhunna ilayka. Thumma, then, ij'al, place, ala kulli jabalin, place them on each of these mountains, their parts. Summa, then, ud'uhunna, call them to yourself. Ya'tinaka sa'ya, they will come to you running. Ya'tinaka, they will come to you. Sa'ya, running. Wa'alam, wa, therefore, i'lam, actually the word is i'lam, but when it is read together with the wa, you recite it as wa'alam. So wa'alam would mean that you should know. Anna, that. Allah, God. Azizun, powerful. Hakim, wise. So basically, Abraham requested God that how do you give life? And God said, well, you take these four birds, slaughter them, and place their pieces on these different mountains and call them. And you'll see that all of them will come running to you. And this is something which will make you understand that God is mighty and wise. And if He's saying that after being put to death, people are going to raise to life, then this shall happen. So with this, we come to an end to this idiomatic translation until these verse 260. And now we can have your questions regarding this part. And after that, if the time remains, we can also have a general question session.
Dr. Saleem, there are no questions at this time. Okay, Adil Qureshi, you have a question. Go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. This is more of a general question about your approach to your choice of words when you are thinking of translating these verses. For instance, mabhut, the word mabhut. When you were talking out loud, what does mabhut mean? You refer to as he got astounded and he got perplexed.
Right.
The written translation was saying he got confounded. Now, all three of them are very, I think, not easy or not commonly spoken English words, but what is generally your tendency? Do you go for something that is more in a some average English speaker would understand, or do you try to be as precise as possible and as scholarly and try to choose as scholarly and as precise a word as possible, even if it is like less
Right.
used?
Well, this is a continuous challenge that I faced when I was translating Ustaz Ghamidi's work, because you know that he himself is he uses very eloquent words, and at times they are not very common, and but they are very highly academic in their purport as well. So this is a challenge that I did face in this translation. So my choice would be that to use and not lose the exact sense of the Urdu translation, and at the same time use what is more what a person of general knowledge of the English language was able to easily understand. And at times you see you have to sacrifice that as well, because you would like to remain close to the original meaning of the word of the verse, and for that you might need to select a slightly less used word, but because that word is more appropriate to convey the sense that Ustaz is trying to convey. So at that instance I would go for that word, and if that would be slightly less known, or maybe people who are not used to scholarly works, they don't know that word very well, then it may become a challenge for them. But again, as I said, I do try that in spite of this challenge, that the word that I use is also not that alien to a common speaker of the English language.
Thank you, sir.
There are no questions right now, Dr. Saleem.
So, okay, we can take, for the rest of those 8 or 9 minutes that we have, we can take general questions in case there are any general questions. Otherwise, we can end the session.
Okay, anybody with any questions regarding the session today, or any general questions, please go ahead. This is the time to ask your questions.
ڈاکٹر صاحب صرف ایک سوال کرنا چاہوں گا کہ سورہ نساء میں جو آیت نمبر 157 ہے، جہاں پہ حضرت عیسیٰ علیہ السلام کے بارے میں آیا ہے کہ ان کی موت کے بارے میں مشتبہ بنا دیا گیا، تو وہاں پہ کچھ اسکالرز اس کو یہ کہتے ہیں کہ کیونکہ یہ جو آیت ہے یہ مین ہے، اس کے مطابق جو ہے وہ ان کا انتقال نہیں ہوا ہے اور وہ مشتبہ بنا دیا گیا ہے، تو باقی جو آیت ہیں جیسے سورہ ال عمران کی آیت نمبر 55 جس میں متوفیقہ کا ورڈ ویسے کانٹیکسٹ کے حساب سے موت کے معنی میں ہی آتا ہے، اس کو وہ نیند سے تعبیر کر دیتے ہیں، تو اس حوالے سے آپ کی کیا رائے ہے یہاں پہ جو وہ مشتبہ والی جو بات ہے وہ
سوال سمجھ گیا ہوں میں آپ کا. دیکھیے، ہم قرآن مجید کی جب ہم تعویل کرتے ہیں تو ہمیشہ قرآن مجید کے اس حکم کو سامنے رکھ کے کرتے ہیں کہ وہ عربی مبین میں نازل ہوا ہے. اور اگر آپ کسی بھی لغت کو اٹھا کے دیکھ لیں، کسی بھی لغت کو، تو توفع کے ساتھ جب بھی اسم آتا ہے، جیسے کہ وہاں آیا ہوا ہے سورہ آل عمران کی 55 نمبر آیت میں انی متوفی کا، تو اس کا مطلب نیند ہو ہی نہیں سکتا، اس کا مطلب موت دینا ہے. تو آپ جب عربی زبان کا جب تک خون نہ کر لیں، اور میں اس لیے یہ کہہ رہا ہوں کہ یہ عربی لغت کو دیکھنے کا ایک طریقہ ہوتا ہے. عربی لغت کو جب آپ دیکھتے ہیں تو جو لفظ ہوتا ہے اس کے بارے میں وہ یہ بتاتے ہیں کہ لفظ جب اسم کے ساتھ آئے گا، جو ورب ہے، تو اس کا مطلب کیا ہوگا، جب یہ شے کے ساتھ آئے گا تو اس کا مطلب کیا ہوگا، جب یہ کسی امر یا کسی خاص انسٹنس کے ساتھ آئے گا اس کا مطلب کیا ہوگا. تو لفظ کی جو نسبت ہے وہ تبدیل ہوتی رہتی ہے مفعول کے لحاظ سے. تو آپ ڈکشنری اٹھا کے دیکھ لیجئے، کسی بھی لیول کی عربی زبان کی ڈکشنری جو آپ کو سلوں کا ذرا سا بتائے گی کہ توفع کے ساتھ جب بھی کوئی اسم آئے گا، جیسے یہاں آیا نا کا ہم نے آپ کو توفع کیا، تو تمام عربی کے لغات ہی کہتے ہیں کہ یہاں نیند مراد ہو ہی نہیں سکتی، یہاں مراد ہی موت ہے. تو اس وجہ سے یہاں تو سادہ عربی زبان کے معاملے کا مسئلہ ہے کہ اگر آپ قرآن مجید کی لغت کو تبدیل نہ کریں تو یہاں کوئی مطلب اور نہیں ہو سکتا. جہاں تک اس آیت کا تعلق ہے وہ تو یہ ہے کہ ان پر یہ معاملہ مشتبہ بنا دیا گیا، کیونکہ انہوں نے ایک پیغمبر کے ساتھ یہ زیادتی کرنے کی کوشش کی کہ ان کو سولی دینے کی کوشش کی. تو اب اتنا تو کہہ دیا گیا کہ وما قتلوہ وما صلبوہ، نہ وہ قتل کرنے میں کامیاب ہوئے، نہ صلیب دینے میں کامیاب ہوئے، بلکہ معاملہ ان پر مشتبہ بنا دیا گیا، اور یہ ایک سزا کے طور پہ مشتبہ بنا دیا گیا ان پہ، تاکہ ان کو یہ بتایا جائے کہ آپ نے اللہ تعالیٰ کے پیغمبر کی یہ جان لی، اور آپ کی دانست میں تو آپ نے سولی دے دی، لیکن اصل میں اللہ تعالیٰ نے ان کو مرنے نہیں دیا. تو یہ اصل میں ان پہ اشتباہ ہے جو بیان کیا جا رہا ہے. اس کے بعد قرآن نے تو مسلمانوں کے لیے اس کو کھول دیا ہے کہ یہ جو اشتباہ ہے یہ ان کے لیے تھا، لیکن آپ کو ہم یہ بتا رہے ہیں کہ ہم نے ان کو موت دے دی تھی، اور ان کو سولی ہرگز نہیں دی گئی تھی، نہ ان کو کسی طرح کا کوئی حادثاتی موت پیش آئی تھی، بلکہ ان کو نیچرل ڈیتھ دی گئی تھی. تو یہ وہ صفائی ہے جو پھر اہل ایمان کے لیے قرآن مجید نے اس کو پیش کیا. تو یہ دو الگ الگ چیزیں ہیں. لیکن میں آپ سے ہی کہوں گا کہ اگر آپ عربی نہیں بھی جانتے تو جیسے مصباح اللغات ایک عام سی لغت ہے جو عربی سے اردو میں ٹرانسلیٹ کرتی یا آپ کو ترجمہ بتاتی ہے. تو وہاں آپ دیکھیں گے کہ لکھا ہوا ہوگا کہ جب بھی توفع کے ساتھ کوئی اسم آئے گا تو اس کا لازمی مطلب موت ہوگا. تو اس وجہ سے دیکھیے ہمارا مطلب ہمیں کوئی مسئلہ نہیں ہے اس کو نیند میں ٹرانسلیٹ کرنے کا, کوئی ہمارے وہ کوئی باعث نہیں ہے. لیکن دیکھیے ہم زبان کو جب پکڑ کے چلیں گے تو لغت سے انحراف نہیں کر سکتے.
Thank you. Adil, please go and ask your question.
سر نماز پڑھنے کی جو میں نے پریڈومنیٹلی ڈفرینسز دیکھے ہیں, اور بھی ہوں گے, لیکن جو پریڈومنیٹلی مجھے ایک ڈفرینس نظر آیا کچھ لوگوں کے میں 3 باتیں مختلف ہوتی ہیں. کور کے رفع یدین کرتے ہیں, الحمد کے بعد بلند آواز میں آمین کہتے ہیں, اور نماز جب ختم ہو جاتی ہے تو اس کے بعد دعا ہرگز نہیں کرتے. اور کچھ لوگ ایسے ہیں جو کہ یہ تینوں کام کرتے ہیں. آئی انڈرسٹینڈ آپ نے بولا ہے, جہاں تک میری انڈرسٹینڈنگ ہے آپ کا شاید یہ کیا ماننا ہے, اور غامدی صاحب کا بھی, کہ بھائی دونوں طریقے ٹھیک ہیں, آپ کا جو دل چاہے کرو. بٹ آپ ذاتی طور پہ اف یو پریفر ٹو شیئر, آپ ذاتی طور پہ کس رائے کو زیادہ لین کرتے ہیں, اور آپ اپنی ذاتی نماز جب پڑھ رہے ہوتے ہیں تو اس میں آپ کی کیا پریکٹس ہوتی ہے؟
یعنی کس چیز میں؟ دعا مانگنے میں؟
صرف تینوں کاموں میں, کہ آپ رفع یدین کرتے ہیں یا نہیں, آپ بلند آواز میں آمین کہتے ہیں یا نہیں, اور آپ نماز جب سلام پھیر لیتے ہیں تو اس کے بعد دعا کے لیے لازمی طور پہ ہاتھ اٹھاتے ہیں یا نہیں؟
تو اچھا, جو پہلا ہے وہ آپ کہہ رہے ہیں ہاتھ اٹھانا یا رفع الیدین کرنا, تو آپ کبھی میں کر لیتا ہوں کبھی میں نہیں کرتا, لیکن زیادہ تر میں نہیں کرتا. لیکن یہ ایک مستحب پریکٹس ہے, اگر آپ چاہیں تو اس میں کوئی نکیر نہیں ہے. دوسرا آپ نے کیا بتایا؟
رکوع میں جانے سے پہلے جو ہاتھ اٹھانے ہوتے ہیں, اور پھر
ہاں میں بتا رہا ہوں نا کہ رکوع میں جانے سے پہلے یا بعد جو رفع الیدین کی عام پریکٹس ہے وہ کبھی میں کر بھی لیتا ہوں, لیکن زیادہ تر میں نہیں کرتا.
جب الحمدللہ ختم کی جائے تو بلند آواز میں آمین میں جواب دینا اس کا
نہیں, وہ تو دیکھیں وہ تو ہوتا ہی کانگریگیشن میں ہے. جب آپ کسی آپ باجماعت نماز پڑھیں تو آمین تو اصل میں کہتا ہے مقتدی. یہ ہمارے ہاں ایک وہ پڑ گیا ہے کہ یعنی آمین کا مطلب آئی سیکنڈ یو, میں آپ کی تائید کرتا ہوں. تو امام تو ہمیشہ ولدالضالین ہی کہیں گے, وہ آمین نہیں کہے گا. آمین تو پیچھے والوں کو کہنا ہے. تو جب میں اکیلا ہوں گا تو میں صرف ولدالضالین کہوں گا.
میں آپ کو مقتدی کے طور پہ یہ اسیوم کروں کہ اگر آپ مقتدی ہیں تو آپ
ہاں, تو میں عام طور سے ایسی آواز میں آمین کہہ دیتا ہوں کہ مجھے اپنی آواز آئے. اتنی اونچی نہ ہو کہ لوگوں کو ہو, بلکہ اتنی ہو کہ مجھے آ جائے اپنی آواز.
اور لاسٹلی اگر آپ جماعت کرا رہے ہوں یا آپ اکیلے نماز پڑھ رہے ہوں فرض کے بعد اور سلام پھیریں تو آپ دعا کرتے ہیں یا آپ دعا؟
ہاں, تو یہ دیکھیں جو نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کا طریقہ تھا وہ یہ تھا کہ دعا جو ہے یہ پوری کی پوری جو اتحیات ہے یہ بنیادی طور پہ دعا ہی کے لیے رکھی گئی ہے. آپ اس میں جو چاہیں دعا مانگیں. تو اس وجہ سے نبی صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کا اپنا طریقہ یہ نہیں تھا کہ وہ سلام پھیر کے دعا مانگتے, بلکہ کوئی ان کو ریکویسٹ کرتا کہ جی آج فلاں کی وفات ہو گئی ہے, آج فلاں بیمار ہے, یا آج بارش ہم اس کی دعا کرنا چاہتے ہیں, تو پھر وہ اپنا منہ رخ کو پھیر کے باقاعدہ طور پہ ہاتھ اٹھا کے دعا کیا کرتے تھے اپون ریکویسٹ. ادروائز جو ہم دعا مانگتے ہیں اس کا تو وہ نماز کے اندر ہی جگہ رکھ دی گئی ہے. تو چونکہ یہ بات لوگوں کو عام طور سے معلوم نہیں ہے, ان کا خیال ہے کہ وہاں صرف اپنے اتحیات پڑھنی ہے اور رب اجعلنی پہ ختم کر دینا ہے اور پھر باقاعدہ دعا مانگنی ہے. تو چونکہ یہ بات عام طور سے نون نہیں ہے تو اس وجہ سے یہ الگ سے ہوتا ہے. تو میں تو ہمیشہ یہی کرتا ہوں کہ وہ جو دعا مجھے مانگنی ہوتی ہیں تمام دعائیں میں اتحیات میں بیٹھ کے مانگ لیتا ہوں, اور بعد میں صرف جب باجماعت نماز ہو اور کوئی واقعہ ہو, جیسے ابھی ریسنٹلی اس طرح کا واقعہ میں آپ کو مثال دے دوں. ہمارے ایک جاننے والے تھے, ان کو کینسر ڈائگنوز ہوا, تو میں نے سلام پھیرا, جو میرے اور بہت سارے جو جاننے والے تھے وہ ان کو بھی جانتے تھے. میں نے ان سے کہا جی فلاں صاحب کو بھی آج ہی ڈائگنوسس ہوا ہے کینسر کا, تو آئیے ہم مل کے ان کے لیے دعا کریں. تو ہم نے ان کے لیے دعا کر لی. تو کوئی اوکیزن ہوتا ہے جہاں ہم پھر ہاتھ اٹھا کے دعا کر لیتے ہیں, ادروائز انفرادی دعا جو ہے وہ نماز کے اندر ہی کی جاتی ہے.
تھینک یو سر.
Okay. Thank you. So basically just replace Attahiyat then, Dr. Saleem. That's what the best thing to do.
I mean, you can read Attahiyat, you can add to Attahiyat, you can, I mean, that is the area in the namaz, in the prayer, which has been left for your own supplication before the Almighty. So it's entirely your choice what you do in that portion of your prayer.